Hey guys, welcome back to yet another one of my Gotham videos in my review of episode 8 of season 4. So Gotham as of now is basically the most unpredictable DC TV feature. The series isn't really doing anything by the book from the comics. Instead, they're actually building up their own stories and going with them. So for example, they're not really doing The Long Halloween from the comics, but instead doing their own version of that story. So while I was totally unhappy with how they cut the Ra's al Ghul arc pretty short, I think that was a good move. The thing is, and this is what I really believe they're trying to do here, is they're trying to minimize all those stories that we've read about a bunch of times in the comics or watched a whole lot of times on TV or in the movies. The only reason they're actually going through those is because they know they are vital to the building of the character of Batman. But once they've presented us with a brief version of those stories and gave the audience the conclusion they need out of them, they actually move on to producing the show's very own reboot of the comics. And all of this is exactly what makes this episode yet another good episode in a series of awesome episodes since season 4 started. But it's not only the writing that makes this season amazing, it's also the performance of all these actors and actresses all across the board. Take the not-so-dark Darkness Tully's character for example. Now that was beautifully portrayed since she appeared on episode 6. On another note, who would have imagined that the overdramatic Barbara Keene from season 1, the character a lot of fans deemed useless and irritating then, would be this amazing? I mean, sometimes a character doesn't show on an episode and you don't really realize he or she weren't there. And that was actually the case with Barbara Keene all the way up until the middle of season 3. But then, the writing for Barbara Keene started improving by a whole lot, and Erin Richards as an actress just started to shine. So yes, who would have ever imagined she would be this pivotal to the story, or that she would be some sort of a comic relief with her funny comments flying left and right. However though, my favorite characters on this episode, or the characters who presented my favorite interactions, weren't even these two, and not even Grundy and Tabitha, but rather Penguin and Martine. Now before I venture any further though, let me remind you that I'll be announcing the winner of my most recent $25 Amazon gift card giveaway at some point down the road in this video, so stay tuned. But with that being said, let's venture into my weekly stray comments, which will address top moments and Easter eggs on this week's episode. Number 1. Solomon Grundy gets his first memory of the past, so it's not really all Solomon Grundy in there. Deep down, there's still a little bit of Butch, and of course it does make sense if he's gonna be remembering anything, the first thing he's gonna remember is Tabitha. Number 2. Now just like I mentioned so many times before on so many videos and even earlier on this video, we're pretty much watching a mix of the show's take on both the Long Halloween and the Year 1 arcs from the comics. The focus though, as we all know, in the front half of the season is on the Long Halloween. Now on the pages of Year 1 and under different circumstances, Jim ended up promoted to captain as well. The case there though happened to be a product of Batman helping him expose the corruption of Commissioner Loeb. On the other hand though, on last night's episode, it is the corruption of Harvey that has Jim replacing him. And the commissioner here as well isn't really Loeb because we know the show dealt with and handled him long ago, even though the one currently holding the title is still as corrupt. Which brings us to number 3. Halfway through the episode, we come to realize that Sophia Falcone is not only spending her time playing Penguin, but also has extracurricular activities. Now after we're presented with her giving Penguin silly advice to deal with his problems, we come to realize that she was the one behind the promotion of Jim Gordon. Her words in that conversation as well are kind of pretty telling of what we should expect is coming our way. Just the Falcone name and everything that it implies. Now those words, they clearly indicate that the Falcone name is once again on the rise in Gotham, while the Pax Penguina name is dropping. And that in return means that whatever Sophia is doing is totally working, or at least was totally working up until the point where Penguin decided to wake up and smell the coffee. But while still on the topic of the Harvey Jim wedge and the promotion, number 4. Now Harvey was kind of extremely annoying and a total ass on last week's episode, not listening to Jim as he sent so many cops into Pig's Trap, and then being seemingly angry at Jim for being right all along. However though, his true emotions do come to light as of this episode. It is obviously less anger against Jim and more guilt on his part for all that transpired due to his decisions on last week's episode. Now you do end up sympathizing with him through most of this, especially when he asks Jim to show up for the handout of the bullets to those injured as a result of marching into Pig's Trap. But all that sympathy is lost the moment he turns into a total a-hole towards the end of the episode, not liking Jim telling him what the job is about. But that also brings us to number 5. The scene with the handing of the bullets to the injured. That was pretty touching, especially with Officer Patel in the wheelchair. It also went to present the emotional impact that everything bad that's happening in Gotham has on Jim. Jim's facial expressions as well at that moment, they made it pretty clear he was going to end up accepting his promotion to captain. Now some might share Jim's view of all of this as a betrayal of his friend. However though, his duty towards his friend is one thing, but if the choice is between a friend and doing what's right for an entire city, choosing the city is the way to go. Now I like though how they didn't have him make the decision right away. Instead, we were presented with that conversation he had with Harvey at the very end, which basically made his decision way easier. It was basically the straw that broke the camel's back. Harvey Bullock, you're relieved of duty. As of this moment, I'm assuming the captaincy of Gotham Central. Number 6 though. Now Penguin does take Sophia's advice, but instead of spending time with literal little birds, he spends it with one specific figurative little bird. It was actually so much fun watching Penguin take this Martine kid under his wing as his protege. And the little kid does have the willingness to become a psychopathic maniac. He's already a bit of one actually. And this is not really the last we're gonna be seeing of Martine. The kid's gonna be a recurring character for the next 3 to 4 episodes, if not actually more. Number 7. That fierceness and challenging look to Selina Kyle. The stubbornness, that smile on her face when talking to Penguin, that is very Catwoman from the comics. She's seemingly careless in a way at times, but also knows how to anger her foes and knows when to stop while she's still ahead. Now there's also the fact that she's been saved countless times by Batman in the comics, who usually steps in at a very crucial moment, just like Barb did on this episode. Cameron Bicandova is doing such a good job at bringing the spirit of comic book Selina Kyle to the character on the show. But that also brings us to number 8. The moment the show's version of the Gotham City Sirens are sent to the Narrows to bring Edward Nygma, you know there's gonna be a lot of drama there. Fun drama though. Now you know that Barbara for one is gonna meet with Lee and they are gonna clash. You also know that Tabitha is gonna realize Butch still walks among the living, only in the form of an undead Solomon Grundy. And even though you know all that is coming, it doesn't take from the intrigue of the scenes that follows. Gotham isn't really relying on mystery in the build-up towards all its scenes and sequences. Instead, it is actually relying on the fact that even when the audience sees something coming, they're still waiting for it to happen. And it is all because you're sitting there expecting a certain level of quality to those scenes that you already see coming. But that also brings us to number 9. The meeting between Barbara and Lee is entertaining. I concur with Barbara there. This outfit of Lee's is indeed sexy. Now I'm not really sure if that outfit is meant to hint at her becoming a certain superhero or supervillain from the comics. I think probably some sort of hero in Lee's case. But anyway, if you do have any idea about that, let me know in the comments. However though, the more important question here is, with Barb now knowing of Lee's existence in Gotham, how long will it be before Jim realizes she's actually around, and how long will it be before he goes out of his way to find her? Number 10 though, Tabitha versus Solomon Grundy and the Code of the Narrows. I love how Gotham goes for realism in comparison to, for example, the Arrowverse shows. Comics are no fairy tale, and True Love's kiss is not really in control here. So yes, Grundy was remembering a bit about Tabitha early on in the events of this episode, but it was not really enough for him to go all Butch the moment he pitted against her and be like, I love you baby, I remember it all. Besides that, the first time such a memory was triggered was when he was getting beaten up early on in the events of the episode. So it did make sense that he remembers her once he gets another beating, and she did manage to get him there with the first hit she had on him. But while we're still discussing this Fight Club arc, Number 11. So Firefly kicking in, Lee shooting her, Barbara shooting Cherry, that all led to the looks that Barb and Lee exchanged. Now besides watching a totally entertaining sequence, there are always those little hints to what is to come. In this case, it's probably gonna be some sort of change to the Lee-Barbara dynamic that we know so far. Lee just saved the Sirens by stopping Bridget and then letting everyone know Cherry informed Penguin on Ed. And to that effect, it's pretty clear Barb feels she owes her and possibly sees her in this new and different light. But it is pretty clear as well that the enemy count for Penguin is on the rise. Jim's already his enemy, and so are the people of the Narrows. We've also got Professor Pig, Ed, the Sirens, and most importantly, Sophia Falcone. Finally though, number 12. Now the biggest surprise of the episode was how it all got twisted and turned at the very end. When the episode first started, there it was, Lee warning Nigma not to get the people of the Narrows all worked up against Penguin, and then bail on them. But at the very end of the episode, it was not really Nigma the people were looking up to lead them. Instead it was actually Lee. Now I really love the Nigma-Lee dynamic there. He was actually borderlining good guy on that scene. Even better, he was actually the voice of reason on that scene, telling her all about the good things she does for the people of the Narrows and advising her to lead to avoid having another Cherry in the seat. But for now, that's all I've got on this episode. One thing of note here though is that I'm looking forward to the moment Solomon Grundy actually dies. I know, it kinda sounds weird when I've been raving about the character, but Solomon Grundy's death doesn't necessarily mean we will not be seeing him again. The character of Grundy is actually extremely versatile because he died a bunch of times in the comics and kept coming back. And the interesting thing about his comebacks is he always came back stronger and sometimes more intelligent than others. But to sum up my opinion on this episode, it was as usual a pretty good episode. My favorite so far still happens to be last week's, but nonetheless, this one was really good. The only bad thing about this episode was actually the lack of a major villain to its name, namely Professor Pig. But anyway, congratulations to James Perry for winning the $25 Amazon gift card giveaway. Please make sure you send me a private message here on YouTube so I could gift it to you. I'll be starting another giveaway round here pretty soon, sometime over the course of the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned. But do let me know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode of Gotham. Feel free as well to drop me any questions you need answer about Gotham or any of the Arrowverse shows. Let me know as well if you liked this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, and while you're at it, you can always subscribe and enable notifications for my future videos. And until I see you next time, thank you all for watching and have a good one.